Obviously, you can retire earlier if you don't do anything and you limit your diet to rice and Mr. Noodles. But how do you retire just a little bit earlier, even just a year earlier, without having to be a total party pooper? My name is Reese. I'm the founder of Well Built Wealth, and today we're looking at 7 key things you can do to help you throw in the old work towel a little early. The first one is a combo effort. Trim your budget and jack up your rate of savings. Clearly, the less money you spend and the more you shell away for retirement, the more that you will have available to retire on, and therefore the earlier you'll be able to retire. However, there is a caveat to this. Unless you have a lot of time on your side, you're going to have to be realistic and really jack up your savings. For example, if you're retiring in a year and you only plan on saving an extra $200 a month until then, that's only going to beef you up by $2,400. And no one is going to retire a year early because of an extra $2,400. However, if you do this for a decade, well, go ahead and times that $2,400 by 10, and now you're talking. Never mind the growth you could make on this money as well. So unless you do this early or plan on saving really aggressively in that last year before you retire, which we've seen many people do, this strategy will only get you so far. Number 2, point all guns at debt. This one beats out the last one almost every single time. Not only is debt a giant emotional and psychological millstone around your neck, but it's also a giant drag on cash flow. The quicker you can get it off your plate, the quicker you can turn your focus into building up your savings and your investments, which you definitely need if you want to retire without buckets of anxiety. Now, one objection that people often bring up around this line of thinking is that if their debt has a low interest rate, let's say 3%, and they could make more on their investments, let's say 6%, then they'd rather invest their extra money than pay off their debt quicker. And at first pass, that sounds awesome. Why not take the extra 3%? Well, the answer is you can. You can do whatever you like. And you may actually have some legitimate reasons for doing so. Like maybe the interest is tax deductible on your loan and you think that that makes it worth it. Or maybe you're using that loan for an RSP contribution that gets you a really large tax deduction. I'm not sure. There are a bunch of different reasons where it may tip the scale in your favor. However, when most people are approaching retirement, they're actually looking to reduce unnecessary risks, not add to them. And this strategy, taking on debt, definitely includes a few extra risks. For example, what if your investments do poorly? What if interest rates on your debt go higher? And what if those two things happen at the same time? Or what if we enter economically sketchy times and the lender wants their money back and calls the loan? Yes, that can happen. Anyway, you get the point. Liabilities are called liabilities because they're liabilities. You are liable. And the closer you get to retirement, even the little liabilities start to feel big. So if you're approaching retirement and you're looking to do it sooner rather than later, then you're probably going to want to ditch the debt ASAP, starting with whichever one has the highest interest rate. Number 3, increase your income. Obviously, if you're able to renegotiate your salary, crush out a bunch of overtime, get another job on the side, etc., you'll have more money and therefore can speed up the retirement D-Day. But this also works after you retire. Check this out. Here's an example where you're just shy of reaching your retirement income goal. You're sitting at 96% on track, and you can see that that'll lead to a bit of shortfalls in your final days. But if we added just a bit of part-time or consulting or whatever income for the next 5 years after you retire, it puts you into the clear. And that's with just 10 grand a year. If we added 20 grand of income for those first 5 years, you're sitting pretty. And that's because just a little extra income in the early stages of retirement means that you don't need to pull as much out of your own investments, leaving more of them to grow and compound on themselves. Now, I have read some of the comments on some of my other videos where I've discussed working in retirement, and some people get downright nasty about how that means you are not retired. And I suppose they're right, if you want to be religious about it. But if you don't feel the need to be a purist, then it could be a very wonderful way to help you exit that job that you are very much done with a whole lot earlier. Number 4, leave Canada. Now, I'm not recommending this per se, but for some people, this can be an awesome idea. Needless to say, yet I'm saying it anyway, the cost of living in many other countries around the world is a whole lot less than it is in Canada. So never mind retiring 1 year earlier, moving to a different country could help you retire many years earlier. But obviously, that's a monstrous decision to make, and there's tons to consider. So if that's an idea you're cooking, you may want to check out the video I did on all of that business. Number 5, slight trim in your retirement budget. Trimming how much you plan to spend in retirement may not be an option for everyone, but for some people, it definitely is. And there's a couple main ways that you can approach a trim. The first is to simply reduce the whole thing. For instance, maybe you were planning to spend $5,000 a month throughout your whole retirement, but you're sick of working and want out a year early. So you've done the math and you figure you could actually get by with $4,750 a month, which is a 5% haircut. Now, on one hand, that doesn't seem like a massive amount, but over the long run, it has a serious impact. Let me show you a super quick example. Here we have you spending $5,000 a month, adjusted for inflation, throughout retirement. And in this example, you're 97% on track of reaching that goal. But if we drop your retirement expenses by 5%, you bounce up to 106% on track. It's a big deal. The other way to trim is to do it in stages, as you age. These are often referred to as the go-go, slow-go, and no-go stages. And their meanings are pretty obvious. In the go-go stage, you're doing stuff, and therefore, you're spending more. In the slow-go stage, you do less, and therefore, you spend less. And in the no-go stage, well, unless you end up needing long-term care or something like that, which definitely can happen, the costs tend to go down quite a bit. Anyway, if you apply this type of trim to your budget, look at the difference. In this example, it took you from 97% on track to 108%, all because you reduced your spending over time in stages as it made sense to do so. Again, it's a big deal. Number 6, tweak your portfolio. Now, I have a whole playlist dedicated to the fundamentals of investing, and I wish I could make everybody watch it, especially the youth in our country. Not because I want to force people to listen to me blab, but because the basics are actually really easy to understand. And the basics are pretty much all anyone needs in order to make consistently wise and solid decisions, which in turn leads to less anxiety and larger investment portfolios. 2 things that come in very handy in retirement. Now, I'm not suggesting that anyone do anything that doesn't fit within their comfort zone. But what I am suggesting is that with a little bit of additional knowledge, you may find it perfectly natural to increase how much you own, decrease how much you loan, and decrease your management fees while you're at it. And just a few little tweaks like that could make a major difference to your outcomes. Again, let's just take a quick peek at our last example where we ended at 108% on track after implementing the go-go, slow-go, and no-go budget trims. You can see that if we go ahead and decide to retire 1 year earlier, it drops us down to 100%. But if we implemented a few tweaks like the ones I just mentioned, we could expect that to increase our long-term rate of return by at least a bit. So let's just say that we went from a 5% long-term rate of return to a 6% rate of return throughout retirement. Nothing crazy, but definitely meaningful. And look at that, a serious jump from 100% to 115% on track. Now, of course, in real life, there's more to consider. But the fact is, most people don't understand how excessive fees and poor returns can shave years off of their retirement income. It's pretty brutal, actually. And now for the final hurrah, number 7, plan for it. And I mean this literally. Spend the time to figure out exactly where you sit and how to get where you're trying to go while paying the least amount of tax possible. We've done tons of plans for people who had no idea how well they were actually sitting. And we're actually able to retire right now, not later, but right now. We have literally seen tears of joy in the middle of meetings. It doesn't happen all the time, obviously, but it's pretty awesome when it does. Now, this may seem to you like a shameless ad for our services, but I'm not suggesting that we're the only option or the only show in town. There are definitely some other gems out there, like my buddy Adam and his crew over at Parallel Wealth. They do great work. And there are free resources out there as well, like the Canadian Retirement Income Calculator put out by our trusty government. It's clunky and it can't do everything our software does, but it's free. The bottom line is, clarity is a huge deal. And understanding the implications of making different decisions before you actually make those decisions can help you save a ton of money and therefore retire earlier. For instance, if we look at a similar example to the last one we looked at, but change our focus to how much money we take out of which accounts and when we do it, we can see that the order of withdrawals can make a massive difference. And that's mostly due to taxes. But this is something you need to plan out in advance of actually doing it. Anyway, are there more ways that you could retire earlier? Yes. You could win the lottery. You could talk your family into giving you an early inheritance. You could downsize your house. You could sell all your furniture and more. But my list is a pretty good place to start.